Hello and welcome to Open Mic'd, a special Sunday edition. Hi, my name is Jason Montgomery. I'm from Attack Bear Press, and this is Open Mic'd, a monthly open mic and feature reading here at Holyoke Media. Let's give it up for Holyoke Media, who provides this space. Yay! Open Mic is a recorded an evening, and you can find our past open mics on Holyoke Media's website. If you do, this is kind of the warning. If you do have an issue with your poetry being recorded, please let us know, and we will talk to Holyoke Media about getting you cut out of the final production. This is not live, so don't worry about that. We are brought to you by a generous grant from the Holyoke Cultural Council and Mass Cultural. So this is one of 3 times that I am going to say that tonight to make sure that we can say we are properly promoting the money that we're getting. Our open mic, we ask that people read it's a kind of a smaller list tonight, so we say around 5 minutes, but feel free to stretch that. And without further ado, can we have Gary to the mic, please? Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Jason. So good to be here. It's my first time at one of these events that Jason's been putting on for a little while now, and I'm had to come down and check it out. I live in East Hampton. Got a couple of poems here. I'm leaving my Greek fishing hat on for a reason. You'll see it in one of my later poems in here. This is called The Frog Not to Be. How many of you know Claude Monet's painting Lily Pad? Okay, that's what this is about. Monsieur Claude did not put a frog on his lily pad, but the frog was sitting there waiting for a fly. The next generation eggs engendered in the warmth of the quiet pond where Monet sat on the grassy bank, inhaling the glinting and glowing air, shimmering water, lily blossoms aglow. What if he did put a frog on the lily pad, but on second thought, knifed it out, sloshing the small gray mass onto the grass, wanting only vegetation on a liquid world? Perhaps he thought of placing the woman with the parasol to grace the pond's edge, as she gazed so dreamingly to see what he saw. If he did, she too cut out, maybe even dribbling droplets of paint onto his shoes. Irrelevant. She would be a distraction, even if an attraction. All that mattered was to frame the impression blossoming inside him. Here's a poem in solidarity with Ukraine. The title of the poem is April 6, 2022, just a couple months after the Russian invasion started. And that morning I woke up with remembering this dream I had, so I just wrote it down. April 6, 2022. In dream, I am extracting bodies from the rubble of bombed buildings. There are many of us under this granite sky, moving charred chunks of concrete. Here and there, torn lace curtains, broken teacups, an odd shoe. No one speaks. We find the body and drag or carry it to the middle of what was a street. Bodies lined up. Others check their pockets for IDs, photograph them if they have facial features someone may recognize, then bag them in plastic so black light could not shine on the remains for 1,000 years. No one speaks. After a few days, no one cries. No one feels as we bend and lift and grunt. In each heart, a hope that there will be a body, no matter how broken, that breathes. When another signals me, I go to help him drag one more body, and he points to its face. I look at it, then at him standing like a tree with drooping limbs. There, on the ground, a body with my face. Oh, thank you. Little change of mood. These next two poems are from my forthcoming book, which is called Marble Dust, and it centers on various vacations and tours and trips and other adventures I've had, along with my wife, mostly in Europe. And this one is called The Kiss Behind the Campo de Glio. The Campo de Glio is situated on the highest mountain of the seven hills of Rome, and it's been the center of Roman and Italian government since ancient times. What matter is a full moon gracing this horizon, showering its cool light upon that cold marble? Yes, it is beautiful, but ghostly. More a gasp, less a sigh. Not something Botticelli would clothe with color. More fit for film noir. A man meets on the street a woman he once loved, a simple hug and brush of lips on cheek. They walk a little without speaking, eyes moist, cigarette ash glowing, the same forum as background. You and I make it real with a kiss in the still, warm Roman night. To the south we see the Colosseum with upper arches glowing in subdued light as if they once held up the heavens and were crushed. Tomorrow we will climb its broad steps to the top, look down on Rome like visiting dignitaries, frame a few pictures, believe we hear the clash of swords and lions roar. But tonight we stand on concrete that will not last 2,000 years. When a bus that has a few hints of rust arrives, we board it, return to the hotel, and dream the dream of immortality. I assume that a lot of you have read the Iliad. Yeah, I taught it to high school seniors for 15 years, and I taught the Odyssey to high school freshmen for 25 years. And after I retired from teaching, what do? I go and visit the ruins of Troy. And being there was really something. I'm a real fan of Greek mythology and Greek literature and stuff. And so I wrote this long 4-part poem called Stealing Troy. This is part 2. Wind in the cypress, in the wild olive, laughing at honor, at flesh and bone, at their delusion of permanence. Grass and wildflowers germinating in the whitening cracks and the fissures of Troy, its stone split, charred, scattered. Marble columns buried and broken like stone worms, breathless, unable to undulate. Marble walks smothered in upheaved earth and vegetation, only jawbone of cat, tibia of mouse, whitened on the ground. Blame the lichen, its gradual millennial meal on stone. Blame the grains of sand blowing from seashore to explode on stone. Troy fallen to blood, to fire, to disguised avarice for the greater good of Agamemnon and all that. 9 times Troy rose and fell to anger, to pestilence, to erosion, to the cloudy memory of men. Look, Aphrodite dancing her jealous dance on Mount Ida with her one promise for the one boy tending his father's sheep. Look, Helen dancing the fire dance in a temple about to fall as she succumbs again as plaything of men and gods. Look, Sophia Schliemann adorned in a glittering gold, posing and dancing for her husband's delight and desire. Once the walls were golden in the sunset. Once the sea shimmered against the plains, but withdrew the horror of tides without amnuensis. Tides of blood and wailing rose and fell in the breath swell of women dancing their desperation, dancing into destiny, city and field deserted, plundered. Walk in the ruins of Troy today and feel the years themselves crumbling through the heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. We really appreciate new readers coming out. So there's a bunch of new readers tonight. I really appreciate that. Next up is another new reader to open mic, Mike.
It's kind of fitting because this whole series, it's kind of like being inside the scallop eye that this whole series is. I'm just like within this giant scallop shell right now, sitting here being recorded on TV talking about being inside a scallop shell. That's cool. You know about like scallops, like bright blue eyes? I got like 80 to 200 aligning along the two shells of their easily flappable selves that can dash away from terror in this world. Anyway, I wrote a series of poems about scallops inspired by their weird scallop eyes. So I'll read two of them. They're also written by my alter ego, Altamira Sors, who was a poet in 1966 who wins Miss Scallop Festival. And she didn't exist, but I'm going to try to convince my hometown that she did through various methods. This one's called Awaited. You know what a bowerbird is? They build these fancy nests to try to like woo others in. Well, yeah, here we go. A bowerbird on the shoreline in the salt marsh, beak in the eelgrass, plucks scallop eyes from the tentacled inners of scallop shells, one by one arranging them in a new order. Hung like stars in a nested firmament, the blues grow over days, somehow not fading, not decaying, holding their own in their brilliant car paint blue, the blue paint blue of a bicycle my father owned, similar to the lapis lazuli chunks on the wall mounts at the Amherst College Museum. Still, let's remember, not faltering in their blueness as the arrangement continues, hordes of scallops losing an eye or several for this bowerbird's ornamentation, his starscape, his new uncrustation of sex prowess, peacock to the world, unfurling, growing, mounding in full blue brilliance, and another bird walks in and sees and stays, and blue eyes unblinking that surround and soothe them, testimony to courtship and futures, these blue eyes in stacks and sutures and unimaginable till now patternings, these blue eyes unblinking always seem as though they should. That's one. Let's clap for those scallops, for their eyes blink in joy when they hear the snapping. I don't think they blink. This one's apocalyptic. Imagine New Bedford underwater. When the Dike Fails is the title. When the dike fails, starfish will suck on to the submerged brick ruins of textile mills. They hunt scallops and pry open their shells for the mussel inside. Everyone's swallowed up by the waves unless they learn buoyancy, steal a boat, or otherwise make it to a shore of some sort. Under the waters, the trees wave like seaweed as they wither. They wither the way slugs salted in the gardens do. I miss the residue scrubbed away by the currents, city walls now green with algae instead of with human scum. Some days you can watch the dye sludge seep up from the mill basements, quiet water fireworks. I saw one that reminded me of fall chrysanthemums blooming in stop motion as the colors hit the calmed surface of the bay. People from all around come to see the sunken wreckage, flyovers and chartered cruises, a railinged viewing deck children fall off of. On clear days, you see clear to the cobbled streets. Kelp and eelgrass root in the gaps between granite stones. Whole schools of fish linger. Both of us live now on the island that survived the swell. We ignore everyone who waves and shoot holes in the hulls of those who slow to dock. Spearfish eels for dinner. We turn off the lighthouse light and go to bed. The bed is in a cabin we built with bricks, floated up from the broken mills at the bottom of the bay, dense burnt terracotta elevators that rode up on the lift of bubble rings blown by humpback whales. They use the rings to encircle and disorient schools of fish before they swallow them whole. As the bricks rose up, we fished them in before they fell again to the ocean floor. Laid them like masons do, like my grandfather did, stacked them for solitude and safety, for inner warmth, from then on listening nightly to the whales singing. The songs they sing to each other lull us to sleep. That's all.
Thank you so much, Mike. So this is a reminder that this is a multilingual space. We do not require that you read in English. If you as an audience member hear a language that you don't know, I suggest you learn it because poetry comes in a lot of great languages. Also, if you are just coming in and wish to sign up for the open mic, I'm always at the front and we still have space available. With that said, can we have Joe to the mic?
Hey, I'm Joe Cater, and I only have one poem for you tonight, and it's a pretty short one. Although I am pretty new to all this, and I was recently in a workshop, and the leader told me I might be a long-winded poet, so it could just be unfinished. But before I get to my short, maybe unfinished poem, I want to take a minute to thank Jason Montgomery and Alex Woolner for creating this series and showing up every month so that people like me who chicken out 5 times in a row can finally get up here and read a very short poem. Because more poets, yay! Alrighty. And actually, Mike, speaking of a theme, my poem is called Dark Blue, and I didn't even think of it. So it's a theme. This is called Dark Blue. I spent my life painting sentimental things, cheerful gifts for other people's walls. I still love escaping to vistas, looking out at endless horizons where the world seems kinder than it is. Spotting tiny birds so alive they vibrate red and yellow, looking up at branches, reaching for sunshine through leaves of vibrant green. But my art won't let me stay light anymore. I need to be below the surface, dark blue. The flow is slowest down here, and I can finally rest a while within the layered sediment of life. Let the sharp rocks partially buried in my bed have their say. Learn to read the rippled pattern of their warning and stop cutting myself every time I float by. I've tried sinking many times before, but people keep throwing me buoyant things. A collective shouting from shore, "Save yourself!" But I don't trust their rescue vessels anymore, never meant to hold us all. Instead, I remember breath and fall inwards, join those calling from the deep. They know heavy stuff stays suspended in fast and turbulent currents. It only settles out when the whole ecosystem conspires, and some have few chances to rest. Where land levels below falls, an eddy swirling against the current, a pool carved out by shifting boulders, like your favorite swimming hole. Dive to the bottom. You'll see all the debris caught up in the stream, picked over bones of dead creatures, broken limbs down by storms, remains of demolished homes, lost valuables, trash. But mostly rocks and sand, worn to a polish. See their burnished beauty, touch the texture of their earth, feel their forever journey, once part of enormous mountains, so old your mind stops imagining its control. They've been waiting for you to settle where you belong, in the always hopeful silence we most long to hear.
I love a new reader. Thank you. Thank you for coming and thank you for reading. Yay. Once again, Open Mic is a open mic with a feature. Tonight our feature is Megan McDermott. Yay, Megan McDermott! Yay! We are brought to you by a generous grant from the Holyoke Local Cultural Council. That's 2 times I've said it, and Mass Cultural, and also generously supported by Holyoke Media, who provides us the space and all of the tech assistance to make this night happen. So thank you to Holyoke Media. So with that said, I actually would like to welcome Bill up to the mic, and Bill will be featuring for us in April. So thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Jason. I spent some time this afternoon trying to decide what I was going to read, and I picked out a poem, and I had it printed, and then I got here and sat down and said, no, I don't want to do that. The one I want to read is on my phone, so I apologize if I stumble a bit trying to connect my eyeballs to the small print here. And this is a political poem, so just be aware that there are violent images in here. Called What's the Difference? What's the difference between a soldier and a terrorist? I am watching, transfixed, a phone video taken at a medic station in Gaza. The young boy is on his back, lying on a makeshift gurney. He reminds me of my grandson. About the same height and build, so let's say that he too is 14. I watch, locked in shock, as his body twists and turns in the throes of some great invisible agony. Tears are soaking his face. In trepidation, I look for some horrendous wound, but there is not a mark on his body. His head thrashes left and right, over and over, pressing both hands against his ears, as if that would stop the sound of a tall building crumbling, as if that would keep his mind and heart from breaking apart. He is inconsolable, moaning and crying out like a mortally wounded animal in the night. Sorry, I just lost my place. Okay, here I go. Sorry about that. Crying out like a mortally wounded animal in the night. I noticed that there is an unidentifiable piece of brightly colored cloth in one of his clenched fists. The nurse says it has been 2 days since he and his 3 siblings were playing outside and watched as the apartment building they called home crumbled and collapsed in slow motion, burying parents and neighbors beneath an impenetrable hill of concrete rubble and steel, crushed beyond any recognition. Yesterday, the occupiers airdropped pieces of paper, telling them of a refugee camp where they would be safe, just a few blocks away in the middle of the ruined city. Later, the Minister of Defense acknowledged that there was indeed an airstrike on the refugee camp. But it was a mistake because the wrong kind of munition was used. As if there is a right kind of munition to use against children and human beings. That morning, in my imagination, the young boy kneels down beside his 3-year-old sister, whom he dotes upon, and helps her pull on her favorite multicolored birthday socks. That's how he knew it was her leg lying atop the rim of a bomb crater. Just her left leg, bare, soft skin, a solitary piece of a human being wearing a multicolored sock. The nurse tells us that all of his siblings, along with an unknown number of others, starving children, just hours ago, were incinerated when jet pilots dropped multiple so-called smart bombs on their encampment of fabric, tents, and makeshift cardboard walls. The boy continues to sob intermittently gasping for air and crying out the agony quaking throughout his being, through his body, mind, and 14-year-old soul. How is this not cruel torture? How is this acceptable to anyone with a moral conscience and a working brain? Do the government ministers and generals imagine that he will just forget about this day? That he will just live under constant threat of death and disfigurement and emotional trauma, and one day, oh damn, there it goes. And somehow in the future miraculously transmute into love and docility. So again, what's the difference between a soldier and a terrorist? Simple. The soldier wears a uniform. There are other external differences, but they are all superficial. What's important is that there is no difference at all where it matters, deep inside, in their hearts, in their unshakable certainty that their cause is the just one and blessed by their God. They both believe that the road to victory lies in killing, maiming, and terrorizing all those they deem the enemy until there are none left. Why do you suppose this is?
Thank you, Bill. You may be wondering, hey, how do I know when open mic happens? And so you say to yourself, how do I find that information out? I assume. We actually do not have a set night. You have to follow us on Attack Bear Press to find out what sneaky night we're going to be doing an open mic here at Holyoke Media. I will say we do know what night we're doing next month, and we actually even know the features. So next month, please join us on March 23rd for Zoe Tuck. Zoe Tuck will be reading here. So without further ado, Jade, please come on up. Blah, blah, blah.
Thank you, everyone. So I have 3 poems for you. This first one is a trans love letter. Certain grace. After, like your smile is totally ruling me, by Rosa. Am I obsessed with death? With being remembered? Certainly I'm fascinated with being careful to live a life in which I am ready to die well every moment as the ashes all have warmed. Certainly I am unwilling to lose what I care for, and thoughts are limbed in loss. Certainly I have whims, heart whims, and fire which churns thickly across my net, gritty smearing paste. And certainly her fingers smooth my mind. Certainly I lean back against her blooming buds, curled like comma, catch her cupping with my body cup she tilts, and as it spills, my thoughts all steam away lost first. And the last to rise, the title of another's song, slips past my lips, a small and radiant fulfilling. This is a throat hymn, Hymn. I'm waiting in line to get a chicken sausage sandwich at Delia's, living for this conversation of the aching boy behind us. Heath Ledger's Joker would say that. Haha, Heath Ledger's Joker is so cool, he says. I like being in corners. That's when animals are strongest. A cornered animal has nothing to lose. Haha. And he didn't know why he hurt so goddamn much all the time. Didn't believe people are supposed to feel sorrow sometimes and happiness others. Didn't understand why there were words for feelings other than mad and pain. And he was confused why someone would have depression. Isn't everything just like this? A gray pitch made to a liminal space, a subtle failure narrowly avoided like lavender or the duty of power, or those many zones of fracture scattered through a field, and everywhere breaks. Pity now the urge and relevance of what I've learned from you to share with him, but Lungta, that's Tibetan for wind horse, you tell me. And just like that, I'm yours anew. Down a ways under the green tree in your yellow truck, music plays. The boy gone now, but you still there singing. This is the last one. I try to read new things here every single time, and I'm not sure if I read this one last time I was here. Hopefully not. Small animals. As a thesis, or an absence of God, there are 2 gray squirrels in my morning. And the first is dead on the road, flattened awful, and the other one stares me down and parallels until a tree it climbs, watching. Which of these is right? When I was 12, we had this porch where a bird built a nest and hatched some chicks, but it gets confused in my memory with the porch whence I saw a hawk swoop into a tall bush and come out flailing, shrieking, disheveled, and the porch my dad built with his friends at our first house, and who knows who lives there now or what they've done. Is it important that they know who built it? If not, works are sufficient, but if yes, then with my forgetting, how cruelly do I live? What of little birds, ones with legs like pine straw twig, which grasp and sing and die, their eggs or the black seed of a heart in a tiny corpse? Which of these says with precision, here are the tracings of God, if God is the pearlescent golden breath, keeping these otherwise deflated skins afloat? And pillbugs, who you knew as roly-polies, who you read as carpenters or butchie boys, and who I met as little punctuations teaching self-defense. And those other useful bugs that spook you in the sudden light, are they remembered too? If they aren't, who am I to say, remember this? And worms, and chipmunks, raccoons, possums, lizards, rats, mice, and what now leaves little scurries and some sand? There are zones of fracture scattered through a field and everywhere breaks. There are impossible questions like lavender, the duty of power, deft circles of once molten things cupping us up for presentation, and how blessed to have a statue. How immortal all our hopes when fears elect. Who's this for? It's for you. I want to apologize to you. But the only sorry I knew might mean something to the dead is memory. It's imperfect. So are you. So what? Someone holds the torch. It doesn't matter who, only that it's held. Thank you.
So once again, Open Mic is a monthly open mic with a feature. We are brought to you, and this is the third time I'm going to say it, by Holyoke Public. We are brought to you in partnership with Holyoke Public Media with a generous grant from the Holyoke Cultural Council and Mass Cultural. This is also the part of the night where I pretend as though like I'm going to ask you if I can read a poem, and then I just read it because I'm at the mic and whatever. Yay! Actually, would you guys mind if I read 2 tonight because we have a little extra time? Yeah. All right. So the first one's a little silly because I'm feeling a little over-caffeinated and a little silly tonight. This year, my credit card company sent me a birthday card. In simple red, white, and blue, it wished me a happy birthday from Credit One. It's nice of my credit card to put in the effort to send a physical card when an email would have done it. My mom sent a text. My credit card puts the work in. It knows how to rupture and repair. It gives double miles at thousands of convenient locations all over the world. My credit card is Senpai. Uwu. I'll never have to ask it to kiss me full on the mouth, even if I woke up and haven't brushed my teeth. Even when my CPAP face mask leaves welts down my cheeks like war paint. I must be beautiful. My credit card likes public displays of affection, but hates holding hands. It likes to be used out where everyone can see. You can tap it, swipe it, or insert it. Dirty. I wonder if my credit card knows how I sit up at night and think about it. I wonder if it's upset with me, or if it's judging what I did that day. Then it will text me to check on. Then it will text to check on me because of some suspicious activity. It is good to me like that. Sometimes when I'm naughty, it punishes me. We even keep a special score. My credit card took the time to send me a birthday card, even though it's maxed out. I have zero balance. So I don't know which other one to read. No, I'll read this one. Tacos al pastor. Her fingertips are fireproof. The trompo is replaced every night with thin slices of pork butt seasoned with adobo that turn the meat a deep red and capped with a pineapple. Her husband wears shorts and a tank top, leaving his forearms exposed to the splatterings of fat from the sweeping knife cuts he makes across the surface of the meat. His brown skin is pockmarked with white from burns that he no longer feels. She keeps her body covered against the heat of the rotisserie broiler and the flat iron top. She makes tortillas. They're simple: masa, salt, and water. She will make 3,050 tortillas again tonight. Yet her hands are still soft enough to braid the hair of their 4-year-old daughter, who sleeps on a pallet made from pillows, squishmallows, and Little Mermaid blankets in the far back of their rented box truck. She dreams in English of princess parties on sunny Sunday afternoons with tiered cakes of strawberries and cream. As Peso Pluma and charcoal smoke drift over Downey Ave into the light of 1,000 streetlights and another starless night, she is repeated on every corner. And now it's time for our feature presentation. Yay! Our feature tonight is Megan McDermott. Megan McDermott is a poet and Episcopal priest. Just by the way, I had to practice saying poet and Episcopal priest several times to get it to roll out right. Episcopal priest living in Western Massachusetts. She is the author of the full-length collection Jesus Merch, a catalog in poems by Fernwood Press, and 2 chapbooks, Woman as Communion, Game Over Books, and Prayer Book of Contemporary Dating, Ethel Zine and Micro Press. As a seminary student, Megan completed a certificate at the Yale Institute of Sacred Music, an interdisciplinary program dedicated to religion and the arts. These studies built upon undergraduate work in religion and creative writing at, of that university. In her home state of Pennsylvania. Please welcome to the mic, Megan McDermott.
Hi, everyone. So I am going to start out with some poems from my book that Jason mentioned, Jesus Merch, a catalog and poems, and then I'll end with a few newer pieces. So for some context on this book, it was really born during the pandemic. So I work for a church, and when we were shut down in person, I was trying to find something like kind of cheap, but cute and churchy to send to the kids at church through the mail. And I happened upon a whole interesting world of what I call Jesus merch in the book. And so the one other context note I will give is all of these poems are titled after some item. Most of them are contemporary. There are some vintage ones. And none of the items are made up. So all the ridiculous things that you hear about do actually exist. I did not make any of them up. And so you'll have a better idea once I read this first poem. So this first poem is called A Variety of Christian Pumpkins. Christian plush pumpkins, $19.99. Christian pumpkin crinkle tissue paper craft kit, $9.99. Christians are like pumpkins sign craft kit, $9.69. Pin the cross on the pumpkin Halloween game, $4.89. Christian pumpkin keychains, $3.97. Christian pumpkin bowling game, $12.49, and more. There is no story I've ever learned about Jesus and the pumpkin patch. He cursed fig trees, plucked wheat, used mustard seed as metaphor, called himself bread, created wine, but nothing pumpkin. If there are Christian pumpkins, are there also Buddhist ones? And Sikh and Muslim and Jewish and Hindu and Baha'i ones? Atheist and agnostic pumpkins, some that are spiritual but not religious. How does the Christian pumpkin show its Christianness? According to the pictures, a pumpkin communicates faith through a carved cross, candle glowing in its emptied body. Conceding the possibility of its existence, let me ask, can a Christian pumpkin ever just be whole? Unmarred, uninterrupted orange. Not standing out, but just a pumpkin among pumpkins, doing pumpkinhood well. A pumpkin not lit for our own benefit, but somehow a light for its own brethren, giving off some Gordian version of mercy and praise. A pumpkin's testimony, something like this: I took in the sun and I grew just like he asked me to. So this next poem was actually the first one I wrote for the whole book, because I sent a link to this item to a group chat of writer friends, and I was like, should I write a poem about this? LOL. And they were like, yes, you have to write about it. And I'm very thankful they said yes, because the whole book then came out of this one poem. It's called Inflatable Construction VBS Wrecking Ball, $19.99. A cross hovers above the words Jesus wrecks sin. And I wonder how the game is played. Who aims and who's the object? Does one boisterous child volunteer to play sin? Or do most perform the role, darting away, falling into grass, laughing when hit? Will they remember this game later as they pray that Jesus might knock them over for real? I really don't begrudge Jesus his wrecking. My confusion is about how and when and whether one should really approach it with glee. An honest prayer would find me letting out the wrecking ball's air, honoring anyone whose faith became examining horizons, waiting for judgment to swing into sight. This next one is Noah's Ark Twisty Puzzles, $11.27. Now this could have been useful way back when. Imagine being trapped between ark walls, trapped with animals you normally would have never let inside, their sounds, their stench. not to mention a family flipping between squabbles and silence. You would need something else to look at occasionally, besides carcasses in the water. Often you'd catch one in your peripheral vision and begin thinking it must be a neighbor or a childhood friend. Finally, allowing yourself to turn, then it would already be past recognition. Again, you'd find yourself churning from something more than the sea. You would need something to hold in your hands, which were kept busy so long with construction. Your hands which had nothing more to make. The saved saved, the doomed doomed. But they could still know prayer through movement. You'd twist the little cartoon animals and ask God that somehow this violence, despite sense, might align into cheeriness. Something as cute as this. Noah's Ark is just a very weird story to have as a very popular children's narrative, all things considered. This next poem is called Bulk Long Arm Plush Angels, 72 pieces for $99.99. I don't like the chicken soup version. Angels selective in car wreck rescue, while the unchosen head to the morgue. And yet I say I believe. Maybe I'd believe better if I pictured them this way. Hands padded with Velcro, arms wider than the showy wings we think make angels angels, though arms are what serve and hold. Have angel arms ever enveloped me in moments when my anxious body might otherwise have crumbled? Hands pressed together for the long haul as if by Velcro. Their arms this plush, lacking all muscle, but that endless softness. This next poem is about Martha and Mary of Bethany, who are sisters in the Gospels. And if you don't know the story, basically at one point, Jesus tells one of the sisters, your sister Mary got it right and you didn't. And they have been pit against each other ever since, much to my chagrin and annoyance. So this is called Color Your Own Mary or Martha Posters, $3.57. On one side, Jesus and Mary both smile. On the other, Martha scowls and stirs. All under the ominous banner, are you Mary or Martha? This is the gospel of grinning. Good Christian women deemed good for positivity more than anything else. Could Mary be a Mary all the time? Would she even recognize her sister in caricature? Or would she know that grimace as only one side of the thousands shown in intertwined lives? Martha, the sister who held her, the sister who laughed. Neither intended to become a paradigm. So this next poem is one of my 20th century finds, which were all found through eBay and Etsy. And it's called Rare Vintage Glory Christian Bible Board Game from the 1980s. And it is important to me to note that glory is in all caps. And it begins with instructions from the game directions. Object of the game. As the name implies, the object of the game is to enter glory, all caps, trademark symbol, and be with the Lord. It could be said the first person that reaches glory, trademark, wins. However, everyone will arrive in glory, trademark, at the end of the game. End quote. I can appreciate a theology where no one wins, or everyone wins and no one loses. Last will be first in all of that. Every gamer gaining glory. But what does it mean for the glory you enter to be trademarked? Everything in glory, a franchise, logo emblazoned. Heavenly banquet, your fast food of choice. Angels decked in robes from your go-to department store. Where are the small Etsy shops of glory? The Patreons, the poets, those who can only afford to type TM, but not do it. Glory, homemade and crafty, hobby glory from de-stressed hands, unwound minds. I'm seeking a sneaking lowercase glory. Quiet melodies of God underneath the blaring thrum of corporate heaven. This one is called Vintage Bible Zoo Game from 1954. The goal is guessing at creatures who appeared in verses but never a zoo. A favorite theologian, Evelyn Underhill, wrote to C.S. Lewis, "I feel your concept of God would be improved by just a touch of wildness." In the Bible Zoo Game, shouldn't it end with the zoo's end too? Peaceable kingdom and all that. The winner lets down the doors of the ark. And so there are contemporary items, and then there are some 20th century items. And then I went back a little further to Victorian board games, because I just think it's interesting, the mashup between commercialism and religion and using games and toys to try to teach a theology or a moral is not new. Like, this goes back to that time as well. And so there was one board game called The Paths of Life, published in 1840. You kind of go around to some good locations and bad locations. And so I named some poems in here after spaces on the game. So this one is called Submission Valley. The people who live there love saying yes and please and after you. They love honorifics, formal address, but only for others, never themselves, insisting you call them by their first names, though never strongly enough to earn the verb insisting. They hold all plans and preferences loosely, ready to follow the path of another who shows themselves more sure. Not much gets done in this valley, except when they have visitors willing to speak their minds and risk the charge of selfishness. These outsiders rarely stay once tired of making all the decisions. They move home where the burden gets shared, and those in the valley gather in their silent churches, waiting for the voice of one who needs no other to direct it. This next one is called Vintage Sunday School Poster from the 1940s. And the poster is captioned, "Learning of Jesus at Home," and it includes on it this verse from 2 Timothy, which says, "I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that lived first in your grandmother, Lois, and your mother, Eunice, and now, I am sure, lives in you." In the poster, a young mother sits in front of an open window, night sky, full moon, while her child, age 3, maybe 4, kneels on the ground in front of her, closed eyes, folded hands. Captured a moment of transmission, a mother's faith blooming in this body that also bloomed from her own. The poster recommends a passage from 2 Timothy that speaks of faith passed generation to generation. Sometimes this is true. Sometimes we break links. Sometimes we transform and twist them. My Catholic parents taught me to pray, and now I teach others about prayer as an Episcopal woman priest. We learn at home and outside it. We learn at home, but see, the poster knows. We learn at home with the window open. This is another retro board game, Bible board game. The Bible says, "'Tis so," and that's in all caps, and it's from the 1960s. And the poem just begins with these categories from the game: 5-point Proverbs, 10-point Proverbs, 15-point Proverbs, 20-point Proverbs, 25-point Proverbs. For 5 points, know that wisdom is better than gold, rubies, that it loves rebuke. For 10, the danger of greed, wickedness, loans. 15, the need to avoid boasting, hate. In the 20-point realm, wine is a mocker, and even a child is known by its doings. 25-point Proverbs advertise merits of a friend that sticketh closer than a brother, a soft answer, a virtuous woman, a good name. You can rack up the points if you wish. But first, let me tell you, for no points, you can know what it feels like to be unwise or not in the know. For no points, you can be obstinate, neglecting advice, chucking it in favor of whims. For no points, you might know a really juicy sin. Let it wreck your life, your parents' trust. Let it lead you to rebuilding, redefining. For no points, you can say what you are thinking and see what happens when you tell the truth. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, and then I'll keep going. This is Fantastic Faith Tattoos, $2.57. And the item description says 72 temporary tattoos, including images of Moses, Joshua, David, Deborah, Esther, and Joseph, as well as the words trust, believe, pray, obey, strength, and power. So many of my friends have real tattoos that periodically I think about getting one, and whether there's anything I care about enough to keep it on my body forever. My imaginings tend toward faith laced with the gruesome. Mostly, I consider a tent peg as a symbol of Jael, who drove one through an enemy's head in the book of Judges. She, in her glory, pierced me as well, drove through my conception that being a woman of God was just one gentle thing. It wasn't only her, of course, but it is more poetic that way. To say that Jael was the one who shattered my head open, so new ideas might fill the fissures. Once those revelations were stitched into place, I knew fantastic faith. Maybe I would have known sooner if at 7 I'd been sticking woman warrior Deborah to my skin, or Esther, a savior of her people. And maybe if they had been visible next to a tattoo saying, obey, it would have redirected every obedient impulse towards the voices saying to speak and stand. Maybe I would have rejoiced, pressing power to my cheek. This one is called Personalized Cross Lollipops, $15.79. On this virtual corner that specializes in the wholesome, you can buy, for some reason, a lickable cross. Though no one can really call foul when the Eucharist also means taking the broken Christ into our mouths. What is the theology behind crucifixion as candy? I remind myself that there's a difference between a crucifix and an empty cross. The latter reminding that Jesus no longer hangs there, but resides elsewhere, alive. So maybe we should all be licking toward eternity, even if the tongue must pick up death's underlying flavor. Candy, a symbol of suffering made sweet, a reminder that divine intervention on occasion might turn the worst to sugar. This next one is Solomon's Treasure game about Proverbs from the 1980s. And it's important to know for this one, the S's in Solomon's are dollar signs. And it starts with a quote from the game instructions. But it's more than a game. Players learn about the true treasures in life, including joy, happiness, insight, humility, knowledge, understanding, trust, and reverence for the Lord. When I try to trace back the origins of this religious self, I remember a moment in the car, Bible open in the back seat. My parents asked what I was reading, expecting the latest Harry Potter, but I answered the Book of Proverbs. In my teen years, one AIM username declared me Proverb 1810 Meggie. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. Sometimes I wonder why Proverbs was my favorite, but I reread that verse and know I was afraid of so much. Proverbs gave answers, promises, wisdom, simple and short, faith reduced to things I might win, benefits, self-improvement, treasure. What now do I name as treasure? What are the benefits to belief if I've given up on being made wise? This is another Victorian board game poem based off of one of the spaces on the Paths of Life game from 1840. It's called Needy Maze. Consider a straight line, tethering the self to God, a friend, a lover, for an uncomplicated system of need expressing and need receiving. Consider how you've never had it. Consider that even speaking at your plainest in prayers or text or bedroom whispers, the line has always been cut eventually. And yet you still believe you might find your way to the other end, to the one holding what you're seeking, even if it means winding roads. Like any mystic or unloved romantic, you can accept an elaborate maze. You believe in the possibility of an unseen center. I think I have one more from here I want to read. And then I'll read a few new poems. So I mentioned this was an early COVID project, and this is the real COVID poem of the bunch, which you'll quickly see why. This is called Growing Closer to God Women's T-shirt, $7.97. On a T-shirt, a Bible with the words social distancing and growing closer to God on the front, proclaiming quarantine a time to dive deeper into divinity. Where's the T-shirt that says social distancing and crying and watching old episodes of America's Next Top Model to fill the screaming silence, and texting my ex-boyfriend too much and wondering how long I can keep doing this, and ordering takeout even though the internet says this is the perfect time to bake bread, and donating money to maybe address guilt and ordering perhaps more alcohol than necessary from the local coffee shop / bar doing home deliveries. And yes, maybe even growing closer to God, knowing God is with me even in this, even without my normal worship, without bread and wine, without me leading prayers up front. The simpler route, adding, this is maybe the loneliest I've ever been, to the back of the shirt, letting it hide behind a curtain of hair until it peeks out via ponytail swish, establishing truth one layer deeper, not as contradiction to the optimism emblazoned across the chest, just another fact that the God I'm growing toward already knows. So we're going to change things up a little for the last few poems. These also kind of came about because of the pandemic. So at some point, probably in 2020 or 2021, I decided, with all my time at home, to watch the entirety of the TLC show Sister Wives, which, if you are not familiar, is a show about a fundamentalist Mormon family that practices polygamy. So one husband, 4 wives. The wives are not allowed anyone else. Fun fact, he is now down to only 1 wife of the 4. But I decided I had to write some poems about this to feel better about spending so much time watching this show, which is like 18 seasons. So I wrote a series that I call a series of poems in which I imagine I'm a sister wife after watching too much of TLC's Sister Wives, meant with no disrespect to the actual sister wives, and only the same disrespect to their fundamentalist Mormon theology that I would give to all religious forms of patriarchy. And so that's the series title. The first poem I'll read is The First Wife. Yes to another wife, but only when we're ready. Only when our love has grown so solid, so its own thing, that NASA might make missions to it, plant a flag on it, call it a moon. Only when we've grown so flexible that if my wedding ring slipped into a rain gutter in the middle of downtown, either one of us could slide an able putty-like arm between the grates. Only when we're so mature that you stop laughing at jokes about bodily functions and I stop nursing high school insecurities. Only when physically we're so in sync, it's like we've fused, like your hair is turning my shade of brown while mine picks up your hue. Like I couldn't possibly miss you because we carry each other everywhere on some level of molecule or bone. Only when the universe has gotten loud enough at its I love yous that I don't need yours at night. Then I will let you love someone else, then when I'm loving the universe. This next one is The Third Wife. Entering third is a strategic maneuver. You won't be used to more attention, So it truly will feel like you've gained a husband rather than lost a husband's time, unless he's so bold to think he could satisfy 4, and what are the chances of that? And rumor has it the other wives might like you better, having just spent however long battling each other. For everyone, you are fresh. Fresh voice, distraction, kiss. All relationships a mix of love and strategy, whether one wife or 3. All womanhood as far as I know it, a striving to still seem new. This next one is the 4th and favorite wife. I am supposed to delight in being liked, in being loved, even more delight in winning. But does being his favorite make me any more beautiful or lovely or lovable, or does it only make me new? The only womb still open to him, the only one still eager to laugh at his jokes. I am dazzling compared to love drained of dazzle, to love rotted on the shelf. As much as I don't want to admit it, the core comparison of my life is apples to oranges. When we are just as far down the road of our lives together, will he hold me in equal disdain, equal indifference? To be the favorite is to anticipate a loss that would disembowel me. To be the favorite is to know he has no interest in fairness, even if it benefits me now. I am the favorite, but he is my only, compared not to love with luster fading, but something entirely original. He, the only luster, the only light I cling to in the cold of this family of women who rightfully hate me. To be his heroine, I become the villain. For now, I make the gamble, no backup plan in sight. And my last poem for the night is another Sister Wives poem, and this one is just called Epilogue. Is it all fraught? Monogamy and not. One husband, one wife, one husband, 4 wives, a woman and a man who will never make her a wife, a woman and the first man to call her his girlfriend who then so promptly breaks her heart. There are levels of difficulty, I know. Polygamy with its imbalances, hierarchy, sexism. These poems intended to be a statement against patriarchy. But what poem can I write about relationships that isn't both a statement against patriarchy and a record of giving in? What poem can I write that isn't also submission and admission that I let them break my heart? Men, that I let them get away with mediocre apologies or lackluster effort because I love them, or I love their touch, or I love seeing myself briefly through the lust in their eyes. These poems intended to be a statement against patriarchy. These poems intended to imagine lives I haven't led, and yet they don't imagine. They just tell and tell the truth. Thank you.
And so that is another open mic in the books. Can we get a huge round of applause for everyone who read tonight, plus Megan McDermott, our feature, and a special round of applause for Natalia back in the booth here with Holyoke Media. So thank you to Holyoke Media once again. This is the moment in the night where I do a couple plugs. The plug that I'm doing this evening is for the Poetry Vending Machine. The Poetry Vending Machine is located in Amherst Books, the Wisteria Hearst Museum, and at the new 50 Arrow Gallery site at Eastworks. So if you would like to be a part of the Poetry Vending Machine, go to attackbearpress.com and submit some poems. We are now accepting poems in English and Spanish. So thank you all so much, and have a great night, and buy a book from the feature, damn it. Have a good night, everybody.